All right, I'm walking over to the plaza at Bull Expo where we are having breakfast, and Nick Saban is the speaker at the breakfast. So that's going to be pretty cool. Not a huge Alabama fan, but got to respect what the guy did. But the first thing I got to say here, before you go off and watch the rest of this video, everybody in the bowling world owes Sean Rash an apology. Let's go talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some new rules and regulations for the PBA Tour starting January 6th, 2024. If you haven't seen it yet, there's a new rule based on urethane and urethane-like bowling balls. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about this. Not a sponsor. I'm going to talk a little bit about this and how this could affect players, how this is going to affect a lot of different things when it comes to the PBA Tour. And will USBC follow suit? Honestly, I really don't care. But we're going to talk about it here in a minute. Stay tuned. All right, so the PBA has now changed their rule for bowling balls that are essentially urethane-like. And they had to do the urethane-like because there's ways to skate around it. If you guys know, like microcell polymer, bowling balls like that, like a mix, certain bowling balls that are giving you a traditional type urethane type reaction, or at least what they tried to. You kind of have to include those in the rules. And they asked the question, they're like, what do we do here? Do we ban all urethane balls or all urethane-like balls? Do we ban just the ones that get softer? Like, do we change hardness of all the levels of all bowling balls? Or do we just leave the rule as it is? And what they ended up doing is they decided that they were going to change the rules to 78 hardness for urethane-like bowling balls opposed to 73. Now, for anybody that knows anything about this, that's a big jump. Like that is, and even if these balls do soften to 5 over time, the 73 is still a lot higher than the 68 that they were getting down to. So really got to pay attention to this stuff. It's going to change ball reaction. It's going to change a lot of things for a lot of the ways the lanes are being played. Essentially what guys do, urethane has become kind of like a crutch because it's been, there's two reasons why it's used. One, it's used because it's the most controllable, easiest to read ball reaction on the planet, right? It reads early and smooths out the rest of the lane for the most part. So when you're on these super tough patterns, whether it's short or long, it really doesn't matter. They were making these urethane balls so strong that even on the long patterns, they were making good reaction, that they didn't jump off the end of the pattern. They didn't store energy at the end of the pattern. They read early enough. And the other reason that urethane is used primarily is because it makes transition from lane to lane, pair to pair, easier to read, a lot easier to pay attention to what's happening. It's not making as much changes, so you're not seeing dramatic jumps. Like for me this weekend, it was a prime example. I used Swag Buffalo, which for me it falls in between a pitch black and a purple hammer, allowed me to play a little bit straighter. But from pair to pair, I didn't really see much of a change at all. I mean, I never really had to move a whole lot. I could basically just manipulate my hand a little bit from pair to pair, and that was about it. Now, the question is, does that take away the skill that is required to be able to manipulate ball reaction? That's a question that's out there that I'm not going to answer because I think it can go both ways. I think, yeah, it can kind of hinder the game a little bit to make it to where like these guys are falling back on urethane a little bit too much. When they get too hard, they just jump to urethane. And I'm not talking just PBA guys. I'm talking about people in bowling all over the world. You see a lot of league bowlers that are just jumping to urethane and using urethane all the time. Stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's a rule that's going to change the face of the game quite a bit. In my opinion, I think it's going to make scores come down back to a reasonable level. You're seeing a lot of high scores. Okay, I'm gonna be honest here. Some of y'all ain't gonna like me for this, but one of the reasons that I'm not a huge fan of these types of bowling balls is because of the left side. And I know you're gonna be like, "Oh, everybody's always complaining about the lefties." Well, the reason for this is because the left side of the lane is fresher, which makes these types of bowling balls that much more damaging, that much more powerful, because their bowling balls, they got that fresh lane condition to where they can get it to read the middle of the lane and it's fresh. And I'm not just talking about the oil pattern, I'm talking about the surface itself. The synthetic lane is not, it hasn't had as much traction, not as many bowlers over there, so they're not as beat up over there. So that's why, in my opinion, I talked about this a little bit before, but a lot of these centers that are getting older, that's why they are so lefty dominant, because the left side of the lane is still fresher and it's not seeing as much. You're not seeing the transition over there as quick, whereas the right side is so beat up from so many different players that it transitions that much faster and makes it a little bit more difficult. And that's always been the case, from the beginning of time with lefties versus righties. Lefties just don't see much transition. But now that a lot of these synthetic surfaces are getting to be so much older, they're 25, 30 years old now, they're really beat up, and the track area is just awful. So righties really, a lot of times, can only stay with urethane for a game or two, and then it becomes to jump into reactive, moving in and throwing it to the spot down lane, and that's when you're giving up the angle. Whereas the lefties, a lot of the time, can stay closer to the gutter, and they can get it to still come off of it and go through the pins really nice. They're really not seeing much transition there. Not being able to use these types of urethane balls, it's kind of a disadvantage for lefties, because you're going to have some of these guys that are going to have a hard time. They're going to struggle, because sometimes those patterns, man, because the left side doesn't transition, you don't see breakdown and stuff like that. They're stuck with a fresh pattern with a reactive ball that doesn't give them the shape that they really need, and they really never see it transition. So that's why a lot of the times at the US Open, when it used to be 40 feet flat, man, that was a hard time for lefties, because they never saw transition. They never saw the lanes break down, and they never developed a spot that you could throw it to. Whereas the righties would start a little straighter, and they'd develop a hook spot to where they could then they'd move in, and by the end of blocks, the lanes would get fairly playable, at least a lot easier than what they are when they're super fresh. So you never see that on the left side. So that's where it's kind of a disadvantage for the left there. But at the same time, do we want a guy, and I'm going to throw his name out there, but like Graham Fa, who's pretty much dominated so much of regional tour and stuff like that in the central region, and he's even bowled well on PBA tour over the last year and a half, 2 years now. Do we want him to be able to just throw that ball everywhere all the time? And I mean, it still takes the skill of the bowler. Like, Graham is so good. The things he can do with a bowling ball is ridiculous. And he doesn't just throw the purple hammer, that's for sure. He throws it when he has the opportunity to, because that ball is just that good. And that goes to credit Hammer. Give Hammer credit for coming out with, a bowling ball who changed the game. They changed everything. They made people come up with rules to try to make it fair for the rest of the field, because people who had that ball had somewhat of an advantage because of having that ball. The bowler still has to bowl, but having that ball in your hand is still a big advantage. So kudos to Hammer, and kudos to the guys that created those cover stocks and was able to do what they did with that bowling ball and keep them legal technically, to where they had to change the rules and to make it fair for everybody else. So I mean, and that's kind of the bicker there is, you got all these guys that can't throw those bowling balls, and those bowling balls are that much better than any other urethane ball on the market. It's crazy. It's amazing to me how much better the Purple Hammer was compared to anything else. So, what's Brunswick going to do? Are they going to remake the Purple Hammer then at 78, and how are they going to react then? Out of the box, because if you guys know anything about the hardness and stuff, a 78 is going to go fairly straight. It's going to be traditional urethane again. 5 points in hardness makes a big difference. You're going to see that footprint it's going to be a lot smaller. You're not going to see the traction that you see early, and that's the whole point of the urethane balls, was to get them to read early. You know, they wanted them to read early so that way they were real controllable down lane. And sure, you can get reactive to do that, but at the end of the day, reactive is still reactive. Like that ball is still going to create shape down lane, and it's going to it's going to be a little bit more over under because the urethane gives you free traction throughout the entire lane. Whereas with reactive, if you take the surface down to 500 or 360, it's going to see the front and lose all its energy. Urethane doesn't lose energy. Urethane is continually using up energy throughout the entire lane. Whereas when you take the traction down or the surface down on a reactive ball, it's going to use up so much energy so early, it's never going to have enough to get back down, get back through the pins. That's where it makes it tough. That's where, you know, layouts are going to be very important, using shorter pin layouts, 2.5-inch pin layouts, just stuff to kind of really lay that core down, tame it down, and be able to use your hand to manipulate ball motion. This is great for me because, as you guys know, I've started the whole spread that pinky out as far as I can, get that sucker rolling forward. It worked out pretty good for me this weekend, with the exception of match play, because I don't know where I was in match play. I think I forgot to show up. But anyway, that's, you know, I digress. But it's going to be great for me because then I can go back to just dead rolling the ball and I can control it, and I don't have to worry about trying to create, you know, 260 ball reaction right away when and trying to keep up. At least I don't think I will anyway. So I'm kind of excited about it. I think it's going to be a good thing. Let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think about these new rule changes and the stuff that is going on here? I think kudos to the PBA for, you know, trying to keep the integrity of the game at the forefront. You know, trying to make sure that, you know, the rules are fair and that everybody has an equal playing field across the field. So let me know what you guys think. I'm still debating on. I'm in Orlando right now for Bull Expo. I'm debating on whether I should go to the Storm party tonight or not. It's going on right now, actually. Let me see how much an Uber is to get over there. Maybe I'll go hang out for a little bit. Otherwise, I'll just go up to the bar and grill right down around the street and get some food and hang out. I'm finally getting rid of this headache. I got off the airplane today, and I had a massive headache. But hey, do me a favor, hit that like button, comment, and do all that stuff for me. And hit the links in the description. I got those new books. Help me out there. Buy some of those books. Even if you don't want to read them, buy them, donate them to kids. They're really good for learning the release, really good for learning a little bit of the mental game. I am going to come out with a much more elaborate mental game book. I just kind of wanted to get this one out there with a brief, basically a brief short book of what to do on how to get better a little bit mentally when you're bowling and stuff. So. And then there's the Stat Keeper too. Go get your Stat Keeper book, so that way you can keep track of your stats and stuff, because I have an app coming out pretty soon. It's not my app, but I am helping these guys who are creating this app, and it's going to have so much more than any app that's out there. The things you're going to be able to do with this is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be able to help you figure out moves. It's going to be able to help you with ball changes. It's going to be able to help you with everything. So this app, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably going to, it might be something that ends up making the PBA change the rules again and go back to saying no electronic devices, because this app is going to utilize some things that's going to be able to create so much help for bowlers that even ball reps might be obsolete at that point. So I don't know. We'll see here. But yeah, anyway, I'm out of here. I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. Let me know what you guys think, and we will see you guys next time.